Anyway, I was on YouTube talking about the Mothman because it's super interesting to me. And YouTube cut out, so now I'm here. So I was just kind of doing an overview of the Mothman story. If you haven't heard of it, it's a crypto monster, cryptid. That means it's an animal that probably doesn't exist, but there was a lot of people who reported seeing this guy in Point Pleasant, West Virginia in 1966 through 1967. And there's some other people who believe that he predicted all kinds of terrible, horrible things. Like the collapse of the Silver Bridge. And the Silver Bridge, which was built in 1928, runs from Point Pleasant, West Virginia, across the Ohio River to, I can't say this, Gallipolis, Ohio. And that was a huge tragedy. Here is the bridge. It's a Silver Bridge. It's a suspension bridge. What ended up happening was this bridge collapsed December 15th, 1967 because of a stress fracture in one of the eye bars of the suspension chain. The defect was 0.1 inches deep, and because of that it broke, and the bridge, covered in holiday Christmas traffic on December 15th, collapsed and 46 people died. And 2 were never recovered because the Ohio River is extremely fast and extremely strong, and it was a huge tragedy in the town. But a year prior to that, people were seeing this creature, Mothman, and the weirdest thing about it for me, learning about the Mothman story, is that this is what everybody reported seeing. They saw red eyes that reflected light. They didn't glow red, but they reflected like bicycle reflectors. And it was this huge creature. This is about 10 feet tall. That's the height people said reported seeing. And it had feathery moth-like wings. It went by the name the Bird, but at the time, people were watching the Batman TV show, and there's a villain called the Mothman, and so the name Mothman stuck. That's, I believe, where the name Mothman name came from, even though he is very moth-like in a lot of respects. Young couples saw him when they went to the TNT area. So Mothman's stomping grounds were the TNT area. So this is kind of a rough drawing of what you will see if you Google West Virginia or Point Pleasant TNT area. It has this big structure that is now since demolished, and then this down here is an igloo. So this wildlife area, it's about, I think it's like 8,000 acres of wilderness, has these little igloos made out of concrete that you can go in. They're very creepy to look at. And these igloos hid munitions during World War II, and to this day they still have munitions in them. And this was kind of the weird area that kids from town would go to as like a lover's lane, because there's nothing to do in Point Pleasant. And they just kind of, mess around in the TNT area, this old World War II munitions wilderness area, and that's where they ended up seeing the Mothman the first couple times. Also, to recap, the guy who wrote the book The Mothman Prophecies, which later became the movie The Mothman Prophecies, was named John Keel. He reported all kinds of weird occurrences aside from the Mothman, which also got me interested in it as a kid, like UFOs. He coined the term Men in Black. So the term Men in Black came from John Keel, who was a UFO researcher and what's the word? He was in the Korean War. He lives in New York. He was in the Screenwriters Guild, so he was a writer. But he was, he started writing and collecting all these interviews from people who had seen the Mothman, and then he started to notice these inconsistencies about Men in Black. So really strange people showing up and asking questions, and in some cases they intimidated people, and they put letters under their doors that said, don't talk to anybody, don't say anything, you didn't see anything, during this time period of 1966 to 1967. This is like a rabbit hole for me. Like, I started with the Mothman thing because I was like, what is the Mothman? It's so weird. I started to learn about all these other inconsistencies and like lapses in time and lapses in people. Like, people would get phone calls from weird people. I've seen the Mothman or something like it. You should report it. But not to the authorities, because you can't trust them. That's my tinfoil hat comment. So all these different reports started coming in from these strange things that were going on at the same time. So when I started to research this and like look into it, it compounded. Like, it got so weird and so strange that I just kept like looking into it and obsessing, like, what is going on? What's happening? I've come to the conclusion I have no idea what happened. I have no idea what people saw. I don't know what they experienced. I think that some people did see something like this. There's an explanation online that people say this was a heron. This was a giant, like, stork-like bird that has red feathering on its head, and I can't. This doesn't look like that. There's like no way. Like, there's no comparison to something like this that's 10 feet tall and a heron. That it would be even outside of its normal migratory path. The other thing people said too was nobody said pterodactyl. Nobody said pterodactyl. It reminds me of the size of a pterodactyl. And it's like, it is embedded in folklore in that area. And when I went to the Wikipedia page to kind of start researching and seeing, what Wikipedia put together, there's this whole side conversation of none of this is real. We shouldn't even be posting about this. Somebody argued like there should be a scientific drawing of the Mothman on the site on Wikipedia, and somebody else argued like it's a fake animal, so what are you going to draw for it? Like, what are you going to place on there? The thing that I would say as a rebuttal to that is there are news articles. There's all kinds of news sources about the reported sightings of this. There's a huge consistency in what it actually looked like what the Mothman looked like. And the main picture, I think, on the Wikipedia page is a statue that somebody put up during a Mothman festival, because the town has a Mothman festival, that doesn't jive with any of the reports, like any of the eyewitness reports. Some strange facts that I found out since researching this as a kid: the TNT area, so this place, that building was demolished, this big building on top, because people like to go there and spray paint and say like Mothman lives and take selfies and stuff. So that place was demolished. The rest of the area has been turned into a wildlife management area called the McClintock Wildlife Management Area. The weird thing about that is it's on the EPA's national priorities list for hazardous waste. So the area still has these concrete igloos filled with explosives. 20,000 pounds of explosives exploded in one of the igloos and blew up. So this area is still like really active. This TNT area still has TNT in it, and it's kind of terrifying. I haven't been to the TNT area in town. I've been to Point Pleasant a few times just to go to like the Mothman Museum, which has a bunch of the newspaper clippings and stuff. But this story is it's like the story that keeps on giving. It's like the folklore that keeps on giving, because there's so many like eyewitness accounts. Over 100 people have reportedly seen this thing. There's all these strange inconsistencies with the Men in Black and with UFOs sightings in the time and all this other stuff. It just keeps going. Like, it's a conspiracy lover's dream. But as a skeptic, I want to understand it. I want to figure out, what is this thing? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any logical sense. And I thought for Halloween it would be good to talk about this. One fun fact is I actually talked to, and this ties back into Survivor, I talked to Cochran about this on my second season of Survivor. And one night, at night, I would tell stories. I'd tell like ghost stories, because I know all these really weird, interesting stories. And I remember one night he was like, "Tell me the Mothman story. Tell me the Mothman story." And I remember telling the Mothman story like in its entirety over like 3 hours, like all the different weird things that happened. By the end of it, he fell asleep. So I effectively bored Cochran to sleep, talking about that. I believe I had seen it and nearly died that night from a house fire. I'm not sure what that comment's about. If you nearly died from a house fire, that's not good. That might not have anything to do with the Mothman either. He does predict things apparently, but not specifically the Mothman. The night you saw it, okay. The creature itself, I don't think predicted anything. I think that messages were given to people because something weird was going on at the time, because all the people who received messages about an earthquake in Ecuador, an assassination attempt on the Pope, and the collapse of the Silver Bridge, all those things happened in different avenues. It wasn't like the Mothman flew up to people and was like, something bad's going to happen to the Pope. Like, that didn't happen. It came through like phone calls, or it came through like visions, and people had predictions. One lady, Mary Heyer, who wrote in the paper, got this constant dream of Christmas packages floating in the river, and that ended up predicting, that was supposedly the collapse of the Silver Bridge near Christmas. This is fascinating. I'm going to keep talking about it. I'm going to try and get YouTube to work again later, but I just wanted to show you guys my little puppets, because you can still be 32 and make some awesome puppets of the Mothman and all his little friends. So thanks you guys for watching, and I will post more about Mothman in the future, and maybe we'll do another video, or maybe we'll go to Point Pleasant. I don't know. But look it up for yourself. It's really interesting. All right, thanks you guys.